And still I rise, Mr. Speaker, a very proud, liberated Democrat, unbought, unbossed, and unafraid. And I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to address a question that many are posing, and a question that I thought I should answer publicly so that all would understand. The question is, why am I moving to bring impeachment again against the President of the United States of America? The answer will be better explained when the articles of impeachment are presented. However, I do believe that it is necessary to give some indication today and possibly at a later time as to why this is so important. Why would I do such a thing? Mr. Speaker, I agree with Vice President Dick Cheney. I agree with him. I agree with a statement that he has made. Yes, Vice President Cheney represents the Republican Party, or he did when he was vice president, and everyone knows that I'm a Democrat. But that doesn't mean that we can't agree on some of the important and great issues of our time. One of the great issues of our time is before us now, and I'd like to read the words of Vice President Cheney, words that I agree with, Mr. Speaker. Vice President Cheney has indicated, and if I may use my pointer, he has indicated on September 6th of 2024, this was published, he indicated, in our nation's 248-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. Let me pause for just a moment. I would like to highlight this language. An individual, one person, who is a greater threat to our republic, important statement, republic, than Donald Trump. In 248 years, I'll come back to these in just a moment, he tried to steal the last election. Now, this was September of 2024, so it's the election prior to September of 2024. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power. Keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He can never be trusted with power again. I agree with this. As citizens, we each have a duty to put country above partisanship, to defend, actually he says, to put country above partisanship, to defend our Constitution. Now, let's walk back through this with emphasis on certain things. One individual, Donald Trump, is a greater threat to the republic than any others. Never before a person who has been a greater threat than Donald Trump. Why is he a greater threat? Well, you first have to understand, if you don't, that we have a republic. A republic is government by the public, but it is done by and through representation. Representatives, the House of Representatives, the Senate. The republic speaks through representatives. We have a republic, and he indicates that this president is a great threat to representational government, to the republic. Well, let's look at this. He, Donald Trump, doesn't respect the separation of powers. He believes that the judiciary should agree with him, and if the judiciary does not agree, he has as much as said they should be impeached. So emphatic was he about this impeachment that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States of America had to call him out publicly. Didn't use his name, but we all knew that he was speaking to the president at the time, President Donald Trump. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court reminded the president that in this country we have a history of appealing decisions of the courts. We don't impeach judges because we don't agree with their decisions. We appeal these decisions. He doesn't respect separation of powers. He owns the House of Representatives. He owns the Senate. The Senate, the House, will not make a move without his consent and permission. As of late, however, there are some indications that some independence is starting to present itself. But generally speaking, the president doesn't respect separation of powers. If a member of the House disagrees with him, he immediately calls upon the constituents of that member to do what is necessary within the law, generally speaking, to make sure that that member gets phone calls, to make sure that that member is intimidated to the extent that that member has to reconsider whatever the disagreement was. This is the President of the United States, the intimidator in chief. He prides himself on his ability to intimidate, to get persons to cooperate. So he doesn't believe in separation of powers. He disrespects the House and the Senate, the members who don't give him what he desires. He is also a person who thinks that he can literally do whatever he pleases, given that he has this mandate from the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has indicated, I say mandate, given him an indication that he is above the law in certain areas. The Supreme Court didn't use the language above the law, but the Supreme Court has given him this belief that he is above the law. The Supreme Court talked about immunity, but he has taken this as an indication that he's above the law. So he'll do pretty much whatever he chooses. And one of the reasons that Vice President Cheney made these comments was because as president, the President of the United States of America, these are my words, not Vice President Cheney's, the president incited the insurrection. There are people using other terminology. I believe it was an insurrection. The insurrection that took place after the election wherein he was defeated. He incited the persons to come over to the capital of the United States of America, the citadel of democracy, as it is called and known as. He incited them to come over here to invade the capital itself. And after the invasion took place, they went through the halls. They did some very ugly things, aside from calling for the lynching of people. They had a gallows, aside from having some anti-Semitic commentary on various pieces of paraphernalia. Aside from these things, they did some other things, something as demeaning and vile as defecating in various public places within the Congress, within the buildings. These were some very vile, mean-spirited people who invaded the Capitol. And they did this at the behest of the President of the United States of America. After all of this was done, the President being sworn in on January 20th of 2025, after all of this had taken place at a prior election, the very first act that the president engaged in, it seems, after he had raised his hand to be sworn in, upon lowering his hand, he seems to have rushed over to some place where he had a document that allowed him to pardon the people that defecated in the Congress, in the buildings, the people that marched through looking for the vice president at that time, indicating that they wanted to do harm to him. He pardoned these people. This was his very first act, it seems, immediately after being sworn in. This is the person who is President of the United States of America. And unfortunately, there are many people who just brush aside what happened on January 6th of 2021. They just brush it aside as though, oh, well, that happened, but it won't happen again, seems to be the attitude that's preeminent among the minds of many. Well, if he did it once, what makes you think that he won't do it again? Where is the empirical evidence to support the notion that a person who incited this, who pardoned the people as one of his very first act, if not the very first act that he had, that he engaged in after being elected president again, on January 20th, that's when the president sworn in. This is when he signed a pardon for these people who came into the Capitol in a very rambunctious way, in a very demeaning way, in fact. People died as a result of this. He instigated this. What causes people to think that he won't do it again? I believe that he will. I believe that he will find great difficulty in stepping down from office. And as a result of my belief, and as a result of his not respecting the separation of powers, as a result of his not understanding that there should be some independence in the judiciary, that the judiciary is not for him to supervise, I put all of this into my collection of thoughts. And as I do so, I have to agree with Vice President Cheney. In our nation's 248-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. Yes, he tried to steal the last election, the election before September 6th of 2024 when this statement was published. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters, the people of the United States of America, the voters, had rejected him. He can never be trusted with power again. I will be bringing articles of impeachment because what Vice President Cheney, may he rest in peace, what Vice President Cheney said then, September 6, 2024, is true now. We should never have trusted him. He has been given a second chance to steal fire from the gods. We should never have allowed him to do so. But there is a remedy. When the courts can't control him, and when his party won't control him, then the only remedy left is impeachment. That's all that we have. And there are some people who would say that this is not the right time. Well, let's address the question of timing. Dr. King says the time is always right to do what is right. If the republic is at risk, the time is always right to do what is right, to make sure the republic is protected. I will be doing what I believe is right to protect the republic. There were people who said to those persons who were at the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday. This is not the right time to march. Don't march now. Let's do it another day. But the Honorable John Lewis, who was a member of this very House, a colleague, he said, no, we march. And they did march. And they marched knowing that there would be harm that they would have to suffer. They knew this. They saw the constabulary as they approached the crest in the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They knew what was going to happen, but they marched on. If they could march on knowing that they were going to be harmed, and the Honorable John Lewis told me personally that he thought he was going to die on that bridge. They beat them all the way back to the church where they started. Church-going people beat them all the way back. If they would march on facing this kind of danger, surely I should march on and bring articles of impeachment. I'm not requiring or asking any member of this House to vote with me. Vote your conscience. Do what you believe is right. I'm going to vote my conscience. I'm not going to vote to table these articles of impeachment. Those who vote to table are indicating that for whatever reasons, they don't think that it should be an actual vote. There should be an actual vote on the articles themselves. They're saying, let's put this off. Well, if that's your opinion, then you do that. But that's not my opinion. There needs to be a vote, not only on this motion to table that will be presented, but also a vote on the actual articles of impeachment. This man is a threat to our republic. He cannot be trusted. Vice President Cheney was right then, and he is right now. I'm going to bring those articles of impeachment. And I can only assure the public who is constantly asking me, how many votes do you think you'll have? I can only assure you of one thing. I will have one vote. This I can assure you of. I will have one vote. Why? Because I believe that it is better to stand alone on some issues than not stand at all. I will stand. I will present the articles. And when I vote, if I'm the only person to do it, I will know, and posterity will know, that I have done the right thing.